Good evening, team. Welcome to session 13 of Zombie Quarantena. I wanted to start this off by saying that we had a little bit of a change in how we've been doing things over this past week. So on Thursday nights, I actually had a little bit of a technical glitch, and then we had a family thing happen, and then some of our friends couldn't be with us. So it ended up being just me and my friend Jack. And once I realized it was just he and I said, you know what? I actually want to try something different. I have an idea for how I want to do a thing, but I haven't had a chance to research it yet. Would you be cool with like sitting and watching me try and figure out how to do this? I'm pretty sure we can do it, but it's going to require a little bit of work, which will involve me Googling things and doing things that don't work and thinking through problems. And Jack was like, yeah, let's do it. So that's what we did. But we didn't record that session because watching someone Google stuff may not be the best use of our viewers' time, people who want to watch it on YouTube. So I think what we may do going forward is move to that sort of format where Thursday nights is more discussion and ideas and research. And then I'll do a video over the weekend that will be the result of that research. That's not set in stone. I'm going to talk to the guys about it on Thursday. But I really liked how that worked because I think it helps me think through how I'm presenting things a little bit more clearly. But also, it's fun at least for Jack, watching me click around on stuff and figure out how people actually program. Because if you don't just know it off the top of your brain, you have to do research and do experiments and try stuff that does and does not work. So as a consequence, this week I'm just going to walk through what we did for our solution. But first, let me talk about what I wanted to do. Okay, this gets down to how weapons are represented in the game. So if we go to our player and we scroll down through his, drill down through his skeleton far enough, it goes right clavicle and right upper arm and right hand. There's a weapon container, and then there's his weapon, which we can zoom in on. Okay, so way back at the beginning, I said that one way to put weapons in the hands of your characters is to put all of them there and then just deactivate them, and then through scripts, activate them as needed. And that was my plan. That was what we were going to do, because that's the way I've always done it. But then I started messing around with these scriptable object weapon definitions, and I thought, if we could put the model in the weapon definition and give it somewhere to go, then we could put in, we would not need to code every single weapon. We could just have it placed dynamically, allowing us to create an infinite number of weapons with no more code once we get the logic implemented. And after a little bit of work, we figured out how to do that. It's really cool. So, let's go through the steps that we need to do. First, though, we've got to actually fix a bug. So we're going to have to do several things. We're going to have to make an update to our object pooler to allow us to create new objects that can be pooled. We're going to need to add a few more details to our weapon definition. We have to create some prefabs because of the way our object pooler works. I'll explain that when we get there. We're going to need to create some tags, which goes along with what I was just talking about. We're going to need to then write the script that's going to add the weapons to the object pooler so that we can instantiate them and deactivate them. And then we need to change some of the functions of how our weapons are populated and changed when we change when we go to the previous or to the next weapon. So that's what we're going to do today. Before we get to any of that, though, we have to fix a bug in the weapon handler. So let me go to my simple player, who's starting to be not as simple as I mentioned last time. We've got a fair number of scripts on the simple player now, most of which we've created ourselves, which is pretty cool. But let's go to the weapon handler and click here. And I have Visual Studio opening in the wrong window because this is the first time I've used it on my new computer. I have gotten back to where I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing with my working on my desktop, which is great fun. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down in the weapon handler to line 100 and to line 105 of weapon handler. It was 105 after I changed some stuff. So it's actually line 84 in the existing version of the project at the end of session 12. Okay, it says, if my loading bullet count is greater than my current weapon definition.current bullet total, or my current weapon definition.my current bullet total is equal to -1. This symbol is incorrect. It should be facing the other way. It should be... So what it's trying to say is, remember that my loading bullet count is, say, find how many bullets I can hold in a magazine and subtract how many bullets I currently have loaded. So if I have a space for 4 more bullets, then my loading bullet count is 4 bullets. So what I said before was, if my loading bullet count is greater than my current bullet total, which doesn't make any sense. Remember, current bullet total is how many bullets you're carrying for that weapon entirely. And that condition is very rarely met. What I meant to say was, if my loading bullet total is less than the number of bullets for that weapon that I'm currently carrying, or it's an infinite weapon because it has a current bullet total of -1, then subtract out my bullets. My current bullet total should be minus equals my loading bullet count, which is how many bullets I need to load in. Otherwise, if that's not true, so if it's not an infinite weapon and the number of bullets that I have left is greater than or equal to the number of bullets I need to load, the number of bullets I need to load is greater than or equal to the number of bullets I have left, then load all of my bullets. And there's actually a little bit of a, load all of my currently loaded bullets. And then set my currently loaded bullets to be equal to plus equals my loaded bullet count, my loading bullet count. And this was a stopgap that I put in to fix a problem, and actually should be, now I'm going to leave that for now, because I'm sitting here thinking about it. Anyway, my current loaded bullets, correct, is going to be equal to, you're going to add the number of bullets that you're loading. The only thing that's not happening here is that we're not subtracting out the last few bullets if we load a partially loaded magazine. But we'll get to that. Anyway, that's the bug we had to fix, was this right here on line 84. This caret should be facing to the left because you want to know if your loading bullet count is less than your current bullet total for that weapon. Okay, so we'll save that. There's no way to see right now in the application what that's doing because this OR will mean that this is always satisfied because remember that our pistol has a current bullet total of -1, so it will just skip over this check every time and doesn't matter. Okay, so we want to make some changes. So what we want to do is, let me show you what we're trying to get to. So, or talk about what we're trying to get to, not show you, I guess. So, in our scriptable objects folder, we have our weapon definition here. And this is the class that defines what is in our weapon definition. And then we actually have the scriptable objects that we created, our actual weapons that we created, the pistol, the shotgun, the submachine gun, and the assault rifle. And we define each of those things here in the weapon definitions. We define all of their attributes. Is it an automatic weapon? Is it a burst weapon? How many bullets can I carry? What the goal is we want to have the model, this thing right here, the actual gun itself, included in the weapon definition, and where to mount that weapon included in the weapon definition. And once we have those things in place, we'll be able to create as many weapons as we want, as long as they all mount in the same place correctly. again, a shout out to Polygon Blacksmith who provided us with these, allowed me to use these models for these tutorials, because he's very good at what he does, and he put the transform positions of all the weapons such that if you mount them in weapon container, they go exactly where the right hand is. So that is something that, if it wasn't true, we could fix it by encasing weapons in another game object and offsetting the origin. But he has very helpfully put the origins so that they line up exactly, which is great. Okay, so let's go look at the okay. So and you can see the offset here. It means that the weapon container is offset of the hand a little bit. I haven't changed any of this. This is the way it came baked in. And as you're going to see when we go forward, if I put another weapon in this same spot, it will go where it's supposed to go. To start off with, though, I'm going to go ahead and disable my existing pistol. The reason I'm doing that, rather than deleting it, is because I want to use it as reference later if there's anything weird about where it's located. But I do want to note real quick that the weapon pistol that we had in the game up until now had a position of 0, 0, 0 and rotation of 0, 0, 0, which means it has the exact same position and rotation as the weapon container game object. And the weapon container game object's positions and rotations are relative to its parent, the hand, and the forearm, and so on. So the only thing that's a little funky is that the weapon container scale is 1. This 0.9999, sometimes Unity will use numbers that are effectively close to the number that you want, and you just have to kind of learn to live with it. So this, I can change this Z to 1, but 0.999999 is effectively the same to the degree that any of us care, especially at the scale of a top-down shooter, which is we're relatively far away from the model. But notice that the scale of the weapons is actually, of the pistol, is actually 1.25. That's going to come. We're going to come back to that in a little bit. So, in order to put the weapons into the hand of the player, what I thought was, is there anywhere in my code that I can spawn items? Well, sure. I have an object pooler. That's what it's for, is spawning items. So how can I get these items, the scriptable object model, into the object pooler? And so we thought through how to do that. So I'm going to need to go up to my weapon definition here, and I'm going to need to make some changes. But before I do that, I have to make a big change to how the object pooler works. So recall that we took this from, this is a tutorial that I found online, and it works great, and I love it. Everything about it is very simple and very straightforward. But it does have one failing, which is that we don't have a constructor for our object pool items. Let me have the object pooler to show you what I mean. Okay. So when we are creating objects to pool, we just come in here and say, how many items do we need? We need 3 of them. We're going to have the blood impacts, the wall impacts, and the bite holder that handles the zombie bite animation. The graphic over its head, not the actual animation of the model. So what I want to do is I want to add a weapon model into this list of things. When it starts up, it goes and gets all of the object pool items that are in this list and creates all of them and sets them all to just inactive. So what I want to do is somehow add objects to this list. But public class object pool item did not, up until, right this second, have a constructor. So I got to talk about what a constructor is real quick. So a constructor is a public method that allows you to create an instance of the class that you're talking about. So in order to do that, you have to provide a model of how we should build it. So when we build an object pool item here through the interface, it's got 3 elements. It has the object we want to pool, how many we want to pull, and whether or not it should expand to include more than one of these things, or more than 20 of these things. You would think if I should somehow be able to take the class and give it the game object, an int, and a pool, and everything would be fine. But it doesn't know how to build one of these things because I haven't defined a constructor class yet. Even though you and I can look at it and say, if you have these three things, you need to be able to build it. The reason it doesn't assume that you have to have all three of these things is because you may have things that are nullable, that are not required, or there may be a special case where you want to make a class of an object that only has one or two of the things that you need. Anyway, you can define to create it and define a constructor is to tell other pieces of code in your project, here are the things you need to tell me if you want me to build one of these things somewhere outside of the Unity inspector. And so we want to do that. So we're going to create a game. We want to require that the game developer give us all three of these things if it wants to create a new object pool item. That's just what we decided we're going to do. So we're going to say you have to give us a game object, which I'm going to call my object to pool. You have to give me an integer, my amount to pool, and a boolean, my should expand. I know my should expand doesn't make grammatic sense, but anyway. And then when you give me those objects, then I'm going to say that for that object pool item, its object to pool is equal to my object to pool. And my amount to pool is equal to my amount to pool. And this object pool item's should expand is going to be equal to my should expand. And what this means now is we can go into another piece of code, let's say our weapon definition, or any of our other logic, and we can now create objects to pool externally to this code. So I'm going to save this. It won't be immediately clear what this does, but we'll come back to it when we get around to coding. Before we get to that, though, we've got to change some things in our object definition because we need to tell it what to instantiate. So let's go to our scriptable objects, and I'm going to go to my weapon definition. This is the code for the weapon definition, not one of the actual objects. So I'm going to create a new header here. I'm not going to create a tooltip for this one because it's fairly self-explanatory, but I'm going to call it model details. And I'm going to say public game object. Oop, I'm missing a... No? Public game object. What's happening here? Oh, okay. This sometimes happens in Visual Studio, gets out of sync with your project. So Visual Studio is not opening these up in a project, it's opening them up as individual scripts. So let me say public game object, my weapon model. It's also why my autocomplete is not working. I'm going to click save, and then I'm going to close Visual Studio. This is because I haven't set Unity up correctly because of a new installation on my computer here. So I'm going to go to Edit, Preferences, and this is going to open up a window. I'll drag it over here that says External Tools, External Script Editor, and I want to go to Browse, and I want to go to my instance of Visual Studio.